All right, well, hello and welcome to Qualtrics slash instruction for data assignment 1 and data assignment 2. So at this point, you should have turned in your IRB assignment. You should have also met with me and submitted your online IRB application. Now, while you're waiting for approval from the IRB, you can start the process of putting your study up on Qualtrics. Now, for most students, this is going to be a survey, pretty straightforward. For some students, this might be more of a data handling survey. Maybe you're collecting observational data. You'll still use Qualtrics to enter your data in so that Qualtrics will put that into a data set that we can use later on for statistical analysis. So to get to Qualtrics, what you're going to do is you are just going to Google Benedictine, ben.edu, and Qualtrics, Qualtrics, ben.edu Qualtrics. And this will take you to the Benedictine University Research Planning page. And when you scroll down, you'll see there's a Qualtrics tool, and you can just go ahead and click on that. And then that'll take you to a screen where you can log in using your Benedictine user ID and password. Note you will have to give the full Benedictine email address and password. Now I've already logged in, so I'm going to click over here. Now when you log into Qualtrics the first time, it's going to take you to a page that looks like this. So you're going to start a blank survey project. You're going to give it a title. Now I've already got one set up. I'm going to move on to there. And when you start a survey project, give it a title, it'll end up looking something like this, right? So this is sort of the default setting. So the way that Qualtrics works, we're in the survey building section. There are other things we can do here under action. This is how we can publish it, make it live. This is ultimately where we'll download our data from. But where we start here is with this default question block. Now, the way that Qualtrics is organized, each block represents a web page. So everything that you put in one block, the participant will see until they get all the way to the bottom, and then when they click next, it will take them to the next block. The first block of almost every research project, unless you're doing like an observational study, and this is just for you to enter your own data, the first block of any research project where participants are going to be interacting with our survey is going to be to put in the informed consent document. So what we're going to do is click on Create a New Question. Now, when you logged in, it might have defaulted to give you this multiple choice question. When you're clicked on a question, all the question options show up over here. So the default is a multiple choice. But what we want to do is we want this first block, the first thing our participants to see, we want that to be our informed consent. So what I'm going to do here, and these are all the different kinds of questions that we have. Informed consent, I just want them to read it and click next. So for that task, I'm going to use a descriptive text question. And I know you can't see me right now. I'm doing question with air quotes, right? This is just a way of putting descriptive text into here. So go, and I've already got my informed consent document pulled up here. So I'm just going to copy all this, and I'm going to paste it right into here. And this is going to be my informed consent block, right? The very first page that my participants will see. Now, you can do other stuff with this. Click on Rich Content Editor up here. You can add in some like font size and colors and underlines and bolds and those sorts of things if you want to play around with it. So now I've got a block here that's got my consent form. So then what I want to do is create a new block down here. And this second block will be like the second page. And this is where I can start putting in survey questions, right? So maybe I want to create a new question, and maybe I want to ask my demographic questions first. So I can just type gender. So I put in what is your gender. We can add our labels here, male, female. It automatically does that. If you want to be a little bit forward thinking, you can add in not specified. Other, because, you know, non-binary gender and whatnot. Okay. So you can add questions like this. There's a whole bunch of kinds of questions we could add. Under here, we've got multiple choice. You can have text entry. This is useful when you're asking participant age. So now down here I can ask, what is your age? Question mark. And then I'm going to make this box short so they don't write like, well, a whole story. I want them to enter the number, so I make the box smaller. Okay, again, we can enter all different kinds. You can play around with these different options over here on this side. So let's say we've got our demographics. Now we want to ask our survey questions. Maybe we have a 10-question scale that measures depression. I'd like to, each of these questions uses the same scale, the same response options. So agree, disagree, or how frequently does this happen? For that kind of question where you've got 10 questions that all use the same scale, a useful option is to do a question matrix. So a matrix table will allow you to have your questions over here on the left-hand column, and then your response options along the top of the columns, and then it's user-friendly for your participants to answer. So I'm going to put this here. Now, one thing to note about this, just as a point of like making your life easier in the future, right here where it says click to write question text, please, if you're using a matrix table, just leave that blank. If you put information in there, it's going to put that information in every single data label for every single one of these questions, and it's going to make the interpretation of the data kind of a pain in the butt. So let's say I've got my questions, so I'm going to do question 1, and then question 2 about depression, and then question 3. And it defaults to give you a 3-point scale, but maybe I want to increase that. So up here, I've got 3 statements, but I want to have 5 scale points. Now, one thing to keep in mind about these scales is this is 0.1, this is 0.5. Higher numbers should always mean more of the thing. So if we're saying how much do you agree with the following statement, then agree needs to go up here at 5, and disagree needs to go down here at 1. Again, this is just a small thing that will save you a ton of hassle later on when you get your data. Okay. Now, if you have reverse coded questions, you don't need to worry about that. Just choose the scaling that makes the most sense for the questions that you are dealing with. So if you have 10 questions, 7 of them are positively worded, so higher numbers mean more depression. 3 of them are reversed. You would want to scale this so that higher numbers mean more depression for those 7, the majority of the questions. Again, just save yourself trouble later on. So I'm going to put here disagree, neither agree nor disagree. Neither agree nor disagree. Okay. And you could add questions here. You can do all of these sorts of things. Okay. So as you are going through and you are adding these questions to your survey, periodically what you're going to want to do is preview your survey. And preview will just show you what this survey would look like if you published it now, if you made it live and available now. And what's cool is it shows you what it would look like on a phone, which is useful because a lot of your participants may end up taking this on a phone. So we've got our informed consent. We click next. Now we've got our gender and age questions. All right, we put here, and then we've got our questions here. And again, this is how this looks on a phone, which is again, totally useful. Works pretty well. Okay, and again, we can just delete this click to write question text because I just noticed that we don't want that there. So I'm going to close the preview and delete that because we don't want that. We're just going to leave this completely blank. Okay. Now, if you have an experiment, let's say, where you want to show participants more than one condition, or you want to randomly assign them to see, maybe you've got 2 different newspaper articles, they're going to read Article 1 and Article 2, and you're going to manipulate the content of the article and see if it affects their political attitude or something. So you want to have 2 different experimental conditions, and you want to be able to randomly assign people to those 2 conditions. So to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to create a separate block for our 2 experimental conditions. So this block right here, I'm going to add question to it called descriptive text, and I'm just going to call this condition number 1. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to call this condition number 1. All right, so this is where you would put your information for that experimental condition. And I'm going to add a second block for condition number 2. And notice I'm adding these before my dependent measures, because one thing to know about the way that Qualtrics works is that the order of these blocks is the order in which your participants are going to see them. So I'm going to add that descriptive text. Now I've got condition number 2. Okay. Now, in order to randomize anything, what you need to mess around with is up here what's called survey flow. So when you click on survey flow, you'll see it shows all the blocks in our study, and it just shows the order that things are going to happen. So this first one is our informed consent. This one has 2 questions. This is our age and gender, condition 1, condition 2, and then this is our set of dependent measures at the end. Now, to randomly assign to conditions, what we need to do is we need to add a randomizer to this flow. And you can think of this randomizer as being just sort of like a container that we're going to put our experimental conditions in. So I'm going to click this randomizer here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my experimental blocks into the randomizer. Now, once I've got them in the randomizer, it's going to say randomly present. I only want to show one of these 2 things. Now, you could use a randomizer to randomize the order. Maybe I want to counterbalance the order of things. So half of the participants are going to see block 4 first, and half of them are going to see block 3 first. In that case, I'd say present 2, and it would just randomly present the order of these things. But that's not what I want in this example. What I want is an experimental randomization. So either to see block 4, or they're going to see block 5, condition 1, or condition 2. So I'm going to randomly present one of these, and I'm just going to say present evenly. That means that it'll just make sure that you have roughly the same number of people in each of these conditions. Now, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to think about my survey flow. So right now, I've got block 1, I've got my demographic questions, I've got my dependent measure, and I've got my experimental randomizer. But what I really want is my dependent measures to come after my experimental randomizer. So I'm going to move them down here underneath the randomizer. So now it's going to go informed consent, demographic questions, randomizer, then it's going to have my dependent measures. Okay. So I'm going to click Save Flow, and now that I've done this, what I want to do is test it. I want to make sure that this works. So I'm going to go to, I've got my informed consent, that looks great. I'm going to scroll down, I'm going to click Next. Now it should show me this, right? Yep, we've got our demographic information. And again, all of you at a minimum should have age, gender, and ethnicity for your demographics. Then it's going to send it, okay, so randomly condition 1 in this example. Then we click Next. Now we've got our dependent measure. And when we click Next on this, we should be done. Perfect. Now I'm going to restart it again. This time it should randomly assign me to condition 2 if this is working properly. And here we have condition 2, so this is looking great. So this is kind of the basics of Qualtrics. You can do a lot more complicated things with Qualtrics, especially in survey flow. So for example, you can go to, you can add a branch element where you can have like if-then language. So maybe you say, do you play sports, yes or no? And if they say yes, you want to show them like 6 questions about sports. But if they say no, you want them to skip those 6 questions, right? You can use the branch feature to set that up. So I don't want that. Yeah, it's fine. So once you have your survey completely set up and you've got it tested, then you are ready to submit your empty data set for the data number 1 assignment. right? So all that is due for the data number 1 assignment is a blank SPSS data set. And this shows me that you have gotten your Qualtrics survey completely set up. Or your Qualtrics data collection instrument if you're doing like some kind of observational study. So to export the data set, data and analysis, you're going to go to export data, you're going to select SPSS, and then you're going to download this SPSS file. And then you will upload a copy of this SPSS file to D2L. Now note, you won't be able to open up this SPSS file on any computer that doesn't have SPSS. Don't worry about it. As long as you download it from here and you upload it to D2L, you will have satisfied the requirements for data assignment 1. Then, once you have IRB approval, you will collect all of your data. And then, data assignment 2, what you will do is you will download the full SPSS data set with all of your data, and you will upload it to D2L. Okay, and that's what you will upload for data assignment number 2. All right, so that is it for the Qualtrics video. There's a whole lot more that you can do with Qualtrics besides what I've just shown you today. This is kind of the basics. You can always Google, how do I blank in Qualtrics? And I can guarantee that it will pop up with an explanation for how to do this. I had to help Dr. Ostro with a survey he was doing where he needed Qualtrics to take some applied input and then do some math with it and provide some results in calculation. And just by Googling around, I was able to figure out how to get Qualtrics to do this. Okay. If you have questions about this, you can certainly let me know. If you're trying to do something fancy or special, again, let me know and I can help you out with that as well. All right. Good luck with your survey design and your data collection. And as always, you can email me or you can set up an appointment to go over questions or concerns.